Our guest today is the Swiss economist Bruno Frey, who is considered one of the most relevant experts in the economic analysis of happiness. Frey's research in this field has achieved new insights that are broadening and changing some traditional principles in economics. As he told in one of his books, economics is undergoing a remarkable new development which may even be called revolutionary. At the base of this new approach, we can find economy, but also psychology, sociology, and political science. Professor Frey teaches at the University of Zurich since 1977, and he is also Distinguished Professor of Behavioral Science at Warwick's Business School in the United Kingdom. He is Research Director of the Center for Research in Economics, Management and the Arts in Switzerland. Professor Frey, welcome to Fundación Barrié, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Why is so important the economic research on happiness, and why do you say that it's a revolutionary branch of economics?
It changes our outlook of how economics can be used for economic policy. I think that is one of the major contributions of happiness economics. A second contribution is that for the first time we can identify when people make mistakes in their behavior. Up to now that was impossible because it was assumed that everybody an individual does maximizes his or her utility. And now we can show that this is not always the case. And to give you two examples, one example is when people don't live in the same place where they work, so they commute. And if this commuting distance is too long, and if people spend too much time in their car or in the train or tramway or wherever, this makes them unhappy. But most people claim that this is not the case for them. But we can test that by asking them generally, how satisfied are you with the life? And then they give you an answer. And then we can correlate that with the length of the commuting period. And we found out that people who have long distances to commute are unhappier than those who live closer to where they work. That would be one example. Another example is that people expect that they are happier than they will be in reality when they buy material goods. Let's say a car, a flashy car, or a nice apartment. Then they will say, oh, that will make me happy, it costs a lot of money, but then I have this wonderful material thing. But happiness goes back to the initial level quite quickly, while this is different for non-material goods like relationships to other people. That doesn't wear off, that is renewed all the time. But the problem is that people do not correctly predict that for their own behavior. And so this happiness research helps us to find such cases.
Mm-hmm. And which are the most remarkable results of the research on happiness?
For me, the most remarkable one is the huge role of unemployment. So if people have a job and then lose it, but they would like to work, this very strongly reduces their life satisfaction or happiness. People, and we analyze it keeping income constant. So it's not only that people, when they are unemployed, have less material means. It's more the psychological effect of being thrown out of work and in a way thrown out of society. Thrown out, they are no longer worth anything, they feel. Their self-image is much reduced. That is the main effect of unemployment. And in economics, one would say, in standard economics, one would say the opposite, because if you get the same income and you don't have to work of it, that seems to be a great thing. In reality, it's not.
It's for that kind of thing that you say that is a revolutionary branch.
Yes, it is really revolutionary compared to standard economics, the standard economics which is still in textbooks.
And what is the contribution of other disciplines like psychology or sociology, even political science, to this branch of economics?
You mentioned a very interesting and important aspect. Everybody always says we must work in an interdisciplinary way. Normally it doesn't work at all. But in happiness research it's different, because here we have an object, an interest. We want to know why are people happy. And then we accept the contributions of psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists even. So happiness research is the only field I know where there is a real interdisciplinary work taking place. And at conferences, when somebody gives a paper, presents a paper at a conference, normally one doesn't know, is this a psychologist or is it an economist or even a sociologist? And I think that is a good type of interdisciplinarity, where people bring in what they are trained in and make a good contribution, but no longer this difference between, this antagonism between various disciplines.
And beyond the methodological and the theoretical aspects of the research, which are the practical consequences of the insights in this discipline?
One practical consequence has to do with what I already mentioned. We should pay more attention to unemployment, to reduce unemployment, especially youth unemployment, which in some countries, unfortunately, including Spain, is very high. Something like 50% of those people who are not at the university, 50% do not have a job, and that's a very unfortunate situation. And I think politicians and the public bureaucracy should pay more attention to this aspect. That's certainly one of the major conclusions. Another important conclusion, in my view, is that while work and income is very important, we find that personal relationships like friendships and acquaintances is important. And that has, I think, direct consequences for city management. I think a city is livable when people meet each other in bars, in restaurants, on the streets, when children play in the parks. That makes people happy to have these relationships. While when one compares this to some of the high-rise buildings outside of the city centers, there are very few restaurants and bars, if any, and this reduces the opportunity of people to meet each other and to have these very important personal relationships, which make them happy.
And in which way or in which extent should policymakers take into account the different indicators of people's well-being, of people's happiness?
I think they should not take the indicators so seriously. They should take the results of happiness research, should influence their policy, or even more importantly, the results of happiness research should come into the political process. And in Spain and in other democratic countries, that's a well-organized system of political decision-making. And that should come in from the voters, from politicians should take that into account, and the public, the members of the public administration. So it should come from all sides. What is certainly wrong, in my view, is that the government says we maximize a national happiness indicator, because they will certainly manipulate it to their advantage.
That is what's happening in Bhutan, that they are trying to measure a global happiness index, yes. Right?
Bhutan is a wonderful country. I had the chance to visit it. It's really beautiful, and a lot of policy makes sense. However, I don't think this policy of maximizing, as they say, gross national happiness should be imitated, because that country is an authoritarian one. Essentially, it's the king that tells, the broader outlines of what should be done, and that's not how a democracy should function.
And what about France or United Kingdom or Canada that are taking some steps in this in the way of measures of happiness?
I think it's even a little. If it's just one other indicator in addition to a GNP, gross national product, or to consumption, or to unemployment or employment, or if it's one of the many indicators, I think it's acceptable. The problem is only if it very quickly is the indicator, the most important indicator, and then it will be manipulated, and then it loses the informational content.
But do you agree with those which, after the Commission on Measurement of Social Progress that was chaired by Joseph Stiglitz and Amartya Sen 2 or 3 years ago,
right?
And they achieved some recommendations. Do you agree with that report?
Yes, I think this report mentions a lot of important points, especially that gross national product, which figures so prominently within a country and in the comparison between countries, has a lot of disadvantages, and they are very well explained and pinned down, and there they are certainly correct. I am a little bit more skeptical about the use of a national happiness indicator, but this Professor Sen, who is also a Nobel Prize winner, is also quite skeptical about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can you explain to me what's the influence of political institutions you explain in your books, like direct democracy or federalism, in the reported well-being of people?
It's very important. I think that people cannot be happy in a dictatorship or in an authoritarian country. We see that in China, where national income increased tremendously. In the last 20 years, from 1990 to 2010, income per capita, real income per capita, quadrupled, so 4 times the level of 1990. That's huge. That's a growth rate of more than, on average, 8% per year. That's a fantastic growth rate. But happiness did not follow, because in that case, in the case of China, they had a period, mostly between about 1997 to 2005, where they had